interconnect a region of over 600 mil bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On tonight's headlines. China says that the military exercises around Taiwan aim to warn the perpetrators and punish the Taiwan independence forces as Beijing continues to carry out fresh military drills encircling the democratic island in the wake of a visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And Taiwan's foreign minister said that Beijing is using air and sea drills encircling the island to prepare for an invasion and to change the status quo in the Asia-Pacific region. Also tonight, the Department of Foreign Affairs maintained Alert Level 1 in Israel as it welcomed the cessation of hostilities in the Gaza Strip. And later, Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte said it is high time for leaders to invest among the youth of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations region to achieve growth and stability. ASEAN Secretary General Datu Lim Jock Hoi shared the same level of value for the youth, noting that regional integration will help secure a resilient and productive ASEAN community. First, on tonight's news, China said that the military exercises around Taiwan aims to warn the perpetrators and punish the Taiwan independence forces as Beijing continues to carry out fresh military drills encircling the democratic island in the wake of a visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Let's listen in.
Cross-strait peace and stability is underpinned by One China principle, that the real guardrail for peaceful coexistence between China and the U.S. is the three joint communiques. Seeking independence, soliciting U.S. support leads nowhere, and containing China with the Taiwan question is doomed to fail. China has every reason to make strong response to U.S. Speaker Pelosi's insistence on making a visit to Taiwan in disregard of China's grave concerns and firm opposition. China's position is just, reasonable, legitimate, and our measures are resolute, strong, and proportionate. The Chinese military drills are open, transparent, professional, and consistent with domestic law, international law, and international customary practice. China is not only safeguarding China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also safeguarding international law and basic norms governing international relations. It is aimed to warn the perpetrators and punish the Taiwan independence forces. We will firmly uphold China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, firmly deter the U.S. scheme of containing China with the Taiwan question, and crush the DPP authorities' fantasy about seeking independence with Taiwan and with the U.S. support.
Beijing has raged at the trip by Pelosi, the highest-ranking elected U.S. official to visit Taiwan in decades. It has also deployed fighter jets, warships, and ballistic missiles in what analysts have described as practice for a blockade and ultimate invasion of the self-ruled island that China claims as its territory. Now, those drills had been expected to draw to a close on Sunday, but neither Beijing nor Taipei confirmed their conclusion. Beijing's withdrawal from key talks on climate and defense from the U.S. have triggered outrage in the U.S. and other democracies. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said Washington is determined to act responsibly to avoid a major global crisis. But Beijing on Monday defended its behavior as firm, forceful, and appropriate to American provocation. Meanwhile, Taiwan's foreign minister said Tuesday that Beijing is using air and sea drills encircling the island to prepare for an invasion and to change the status quo in the Asia-Pacific region. Taipei's top diplomat reiterated its condemnation of the drills. Beijing continued Monday despite initially saying they would end a day earlier, noting they had hindered one of the busiest shipping and air routes in the world. Let's listen in.
This decision to carry out military exercises in the area surrounding Taiwan is a gross violation of Taiwan's rights under international law, particularly in the way it is designated the zones for its exercises. Furthermore, it has hindered the normal operation of one of the busiest air and shipping routes in the Indo-Pacific region. This has had a serious impact on international transportation and trade, and undermined regional peace and security. China has used Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan as a pretext, but is pursuing its true intentions in a number of ways. Firstly, China has also taken specific actions to break the long-standing tacit agreement on the medium line of the Taiwan Strait. And after the drills conclude, China may try to routinize its actions in an attempt to wreck the long-term status quo across the Taiwan Strait. Secondly, China has used the drills in its military playbook to prepare for the invasion of Taiwan. It is conducting large-scale military exercises and missile launches, as well as cyber attacks, disinformation campaign, and economic coercion in an attempt to weaken public morale in Taiwan.
Mr. Wu's press conference came after the Taiwanese military held its own live-fire drill to simulate defending against an attack on the island. He called Beijing's war games a gross violation of Taiwan's rights and an attempt to take control of the waters around Taiwan and the wider Asia-Pacific region. Taiwan lives under the constant threat of invasion by China, which views its neighbor as part of Chinese territory to be reclaimed one day by force if necessary. The army said Taipei's drills taking place on Tuesday and Thursday will include the deployment of hundreds of troops and about 40 howitzers. Taiwan has insisted that no Chinese warplanes or ships entered its territorial waters within 12 nautical miles of land during Beijing's drill. The Chinese military, however, released a video last week of an Air Force pilot filming the island's coastline and mountains from his cockpit, showing how close it had come to Taiwan shores. Ballistic missiles were also fired over Taiwan's capital during the exercises last week, that according to the Chinese state media. And Taiwan's exercises also come after China extended its own joint sea and air drills around Taiwan on Monday, but Washington said it did not expect an escalation from Beijing. Here is U.S. President Joe Biden.
I'm not worried, but I'm concerned that they're moving as much as they are. But I don't think they're going to do anything more.
While talking to reporters at Dover Air Force Base on Monday, President Biden also explained that it was U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's decision to visit Taiwan. Tensions further escalated between Washington and Beijing as China has decided to cancel future phone calls between defense leaders of the two countries, suspend bilateral climate talks, and sanction Pelosi and her immediate family. Washington maintains a policy of strategic ambiguity on whether it would actually intervene militarily if China were to invade Taiwan. In what is termed the One China policy, it recognizes Beijing but only acknowledges the Chinese position that Taiwan is part of China. It leaves it to the two sides to work out a solution while opposing any use of force to change the status quo. President Biden spoke before heading to the Midwestern U.S. state of Kentucky to survey flood recovery efforts. And tonight, southern new subway stations and major roads were underwater in the South Korean capital, Seoul, after record-breaking rain caused severe flooding, with at least 7 people dead, 7 more missing, according to officials. Dramatic images shared on social media late on Monday showed people wading through waist-deep water, metro stations overflowing, and cars half submerged in Seoul's posh Gangnam district after torrential rain battered the city. The downpour that began on Monday is the heaviest rainfall in South Korea in 80 years, according to Seoul's Yonhap news agency. Local reports said 3 people living in a banjiha, cramped basement flats of the kind made famous in Bong Joon-ho's Oscar-winning Parasite, including a teenager, died as their apartment was inundated by floodwaters. Parts of Seoul surrounding Jeonji province and Port City Incheon recorded rains of more than 100 millimeters per hour Monday night, according to Yonhap News Agency, with per-hour precipitation in the capital's Dongjak district surpassing 141.5 millimeters at one point, the heaviest downpour since 1942. President Yoon Suk-yeol ordered government officials to evacuate residents from high-risk areas, and he encouraged businesses to allow employees flexible commuting hours on Tuesday morning. ASEAN and Korea first established sectoral dialogue relations in November 1989. Korea was accorded full dialogue partner status by ASEAN at the 24th ASEAN Ministerial Meeting in 1991 in Kuala Lumpur. The Department of Foreign Affairs maintained Alert Level 1 in Israel as it welcomed the cessation of hostilities in the Gaza Strip. Residents of Ashkelon said they feel good after the Egypt brokered truce between Israel and Islamic Jihad militants was held. Take a look.
I am very disappointed by what's happened the past week or so. I was expecting to be able to enjoy the beach and enjoy the area, sightseeing and exploring, and the situation in Gaza is very disappointing. It's very scary for us also. But I'm glad that last night, apparently the ceasefire has been agreed to, and I hope they hold to it. So the people here are very, very helpful, very, very friendly. They show me all the safeguards.
There are about 106 Filipinos in the Gaza Strip, according to DFA spokesman Ambassador Maria Teresa Daza. In a statement on Monday evening, the DFA said the Philippine government hopes that the ceasefire holds. It said, "We call on parties to exercise restraint and to respect the terms of the ceasefire," according to the Foreign Affairs Department. As of the time of this announcement, there is no report of any Filipino harmed in the conflict, according to the DFA. The DFA, through its embassies in Tel Aviv and Amman, said it was monitoring the situation closely. The DFA also said the safety and security of every Filipino overseas remain the priority of the Philippine government. Despite the ceasefire, the DFA reminded Filipinos in the Gaza Strip and surrounding areas to remain in their residences as much as possible, to avoid public areas, and to continue to monitor the security situation through the embassy's official communication channels. The Philippine Navy's missile frigate BRP Antonio Luna, or the FF-151, is now headed for Guam after departing from Hawaii on Sunday local time after its successful participation in the recently concluded Rim of the Pacific exercise, or RIMPAC. Take a look. The Filipino community in Hawaii, along with Armed Forces of the Philippines liaison officer in the U.S. state, Captain Aldrin Doctor, gave the ship and Naval Task Group 80.5 a rousing send-off. Philippine Navy spokesperson Commander Benjo Negranza said the NTG 80.5, headed by Captain Charles Merrick Villanueva, is now underway to Guam for a brief layover before finally heading back to the Philippines later this month. Now, the Philippine Navy spokesperson, Mr. Negranza, said the Filipino community in Hawaii took pride in the contingent's successful participation in the RIMPAC, which was highlighted by BRP Antonio Luna winning 3rd place in the Naval Surface Fire Support Rodeo of the at-sea phase of the biennial naval maneuvers. The Philippine Navy's BRP Antonio Luna made it to 3rd place with only an 8-meter differential from the first placer USS Mobile Bay and 4 meters off the second placer Armed Juarez of Mexico. Negranza said the Philippine Navy's participation in RIMPAC 2022, which ran from June 29 to August 4, trumpets the command's commitment to promoting multilateral cooperation towards strengthening relationships and cooperation among regional and extra-regional navies. And the news continues. Zero on ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. During the 55th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting and related meetings in Phnom Penh, Japanese Minister for Foreign Affairs Hayashi Hoshimasa has reaffirmed the strong relations between Japan and ASEAN. Let's listen in.
2020, Japan has been implementing concrete cooperation projects based on the joint statement of the ASEAN-Japan Summit on cooperation on ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. We will report them to the leaders of ASEAN-Japan in the form of progress report as we did so last year. Next year marks the 50th year of ASEAN-Japan relations. Japan wishes to invite the ASEAN leaders to Japan to hold a commemorative summit and then jointly announce a vision for future ASEAN-Japan relations on this historic occasion. 2022 is an important year to give a boost to the 50th year. Today, we welcome the joint announcement of the official logo design, as we showed already, and the catchphrase of the 50th year of ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation, which have been selected from many entries to the contest. We really would like to continue working closely with the ASEAN side in order to liven up the 50th year and further strengthen ASEAN-Japan relationship. Thank you.
According to the South China Morning Post, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi staged 2 walkouts during the Southeast Asian Foreign Ministers meeting as Beijing pushed back at criticism of its military exercises around Taiwan following U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to the island. Citing anonymous sources present, Reuters reported that on Thursday, Mr. Wang walked out of an evening gala for foreign ministers in Phnom Penh, where diplomats from ASEAN, the United States, Japan, South Korea, and Russia are meeting. On Wednesday, Hayashi and other foreign ministers from the Group of 7, or G7, along with the EU High Representatives, signed a statement saying they were concerned by recent and announced threatening actions by the People's Republic of China, particularly live-fire exercises and economic coercion, which risk unnecessary escalation. Also tonight, Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte said it's high time for leaders to invest among the youth of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations region to achieve growth and stability. In her speech during the 55th ASEAN anniversary celebration at the DepEd, or the Department of Education headquarters in Pasig City, attended by members of the Diplomatic Corps, Vice President Duterte said supporting the youth will help realize the 2030 regional targets. Let's listen in.
As we endeavor to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, our challenge is to figure out how to ensure that all of ASEAN will reach its potential by 2030. Your Excellencies, I believe that we should focus on the ASEAN youth. Today, one of the ways to involve the ASEAN youth is to ensure that they are equipped with the knowledge and skill set needed in a highly competitive environment. By strengthening intra-regional scholarships and cultural exchanges between our countries, we will be able to increase the free flow of ideas, innovations, and skills.
We should pay particular attention to the region's youth. Initiatives such as the first ASEAN Youth Dialogue, as well as the ASEAN Junior Fellowship Program, are part of our efforts to enable them to play a larger role and more meaningful role in building a more equitable, inclusive, and greener community. We need to re-strategize the way we live based on environmental principles, sustainability, and resilience by mainstreaming them across all areas of work. ASEAN should accelerate its green agenda in areas such as sustainable climate, biodiversity management, sustainable livelihood, circular economy, and energy efficiency with renewable energy.
ASEAN languages may be offered in our schools and universities, while the Philippines has been sending English language teachers to our Southeast Asian neighbors for years. I believe it is high time we encourage our youth to learn each other's national languages. With a collaborative and nurturing environment within our region, we allow our youth to grow and mature as ASEAN citizens while forging meaningful friendships and relationships with their ASEAN neighbors.
Again, for our first photo, may we invite Madam VP and ambassadors to
She also said preparing the ASEAN youth for the global demand is one of the regional leaders' responsibilities to fulfill. The Vice President said the ASEAN bloc's population, bigger than the European Union or North America, and is the third largest labor force in the world, just behind China and India. ASEAN members include Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam.
This is another historic event for DepEd. What a meaningful way to embody the ASEAN spirit.
And after 2 years of online celebration due to the pandemic, ASEAN Secretariat held a physical celebration at its headquarters in Jakarta to mark ASEAN's 55th anniversary. Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi of Indonesia graced the event along with the Secretary General of ASEAN, Dato Lim Jock Hoi, and the diplomatic community in the Indonesian capital. This year's anniversary carried the theme Stronger Together, in line with Cambodia's ASEAN Chairmanship 2022 theme of Addressing Challenges Together, or ACT. The celebration reminded the people of ASEAN to remain united and lend their collective strength as the region recovers from COVID-19 pandemic. Let's listen in.
Thanks to our effective pandemic response and guided by the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plan, we have emerged stronger, safer, and more resilient as a community. Our trade volumes have returned to a pre-pandemic levels, and ASEAN's economy is forecasted to grow by 4.9% this year and 5.2% next year. Notwithstanding these set achievements, we must remain vigilant against the ever-present risk to our economy and recovery. Disruption to the supply of key commodities, rising costs in food, logistics and transport, as well as economic slowdown in major economies are projected to push more people into extreme poverty unless adequately addressed. We should therefore take heed to the past experience in order to better prepare for the future shocks.
Just because ASEAN has stood the test of time does not mean it can be complacent. Our 55th anniversary comes at a time of great upheaval. Trust among nations is in short supply, while zero-sum mentality is rampant. Great power rivalry continues to disrupt the stability in the Indo-Pacific region. At the same time, many regional flashpoints show signs of escalation and have the potential to turn into an open conflict. Internally, ASEAN is also challenged to find a solution as a family to address the crisis in Myanmar. We are deeply concerned that we have not seen any significant progress by the military junta in Myanmar in implementing the 5 points of consensus. We do not need words, but deeds. Deeds to implement the 5 points of consensus. We have to continuously nurture strategic trust and mainstream paradigm of collaboration among countries in the region. After all, colleagues, we share common goals: peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. So, we better make this journey pleasant for everyone involved.
Recent rapid change in the global geopolitical landscape has presented monumental challenges for ASEAN. It is quite evident that over the past 55 years, challenges has always existed and have tested ASEAN limits, be they health-related, economic, or geopolitical in nature. But never before have we been confronted at the same time with so many perils for the region and the world at large. Throughout all these times, ASEAN had, without fail, managed to show our resilience by tackling them one by one in one way or the other.
The 75-minute celebration was also broadcasted live through ASEAN social media channels. The ceremony showcased performances from ASEAN musicians, ASA Choir, the ISN Orchestra, and the ASEAN Consonant. One highlight of the program was, as you can see here on the screen, the sand animation, which captured the audience's attention with a moving story of hope and bright future for ASEAN community. The event also premiered a special video featuring ASEAN milestones in the last 55 years. Embedded to the celebration was the awarding ceremony of the ASEAN Maybank Scholarship, supported by Maybank Foundation in partnership with the ASEAN Secretariat. This is a bursary initiative to award full scholarships to eligible undergraduate students from the ASEAN region. For this year, 3 students respectively from Cambodia, Malaysia, and Myanmar were selected to continue their study in their chosen university within ASEAN under this scheme. And also this year, the U.S. celebrates 45 years of U.S.-ASEAN partner relations. Take a look. And that's it for tonight's ASEAN in Focus. Thank you for joining us today here on the program. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.